In the field of cancer research, we've been wandering in the desert for 40 years or more in the search of promised land. And the promised land is still very, very far away, because the survival rates for cancers has not become better. Actually, the number of cases, yearly number of cases for different rates of cancer keeps on growing. Something is really wrong. Survival rates for brain tumors are the worst of all. And the high-grade brain tumors like glioblastoma multiforme and DIPG are the worst. DIPG is a brain tumor that hits children mostly, and the survival rates is almost zero. Survival rates for glioblastoma that can be operated. DIPG cannot be operated because it's situated in the brainstem. And only thing that works a little bit, prolonging life expectancy with about 3 to 5 months, is radiation. But it doesn't really affect survival rates. Glioblastoma multiforme that can be operated, and can be operated 2 times, for example. The survival rate are a little bit wider, like with between 2 and 5 months bigger, because we can make surgery. But still, the death rates is almost as bad. And the thing is that survival rates did not really improve in the last 40 years. Something is really wrong here. So, what we really have to understand, we have to learn from wise people like Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein, he said that we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. What can we learn from that? Yes, we have to learn that we need a paradigm shift. From the paradigm of thinking of cancer as an enemy to the new paradigm of thinking of cancer as the messenger. And what we can learn is, don't kill the messenger. And that's what the conventional medicine is trying to do with cancer. And that's what all of the money to scientific research goes to, actually trying to kill the messenger. Because the conventional treatments are highly invasive. And it means that we are using surgery, very invasive. We are using radiation, very invasive. We are using chemotherapy, very invasive. And what does it do? Chemotherapy kills lots of living cells. It also creates inflammation. It's not only kills cancer cells. The same thing is with radiation. Radiation also promotes some populations of cancer cells while killing the others. It also promotes inflammation and it kills good cells. What about the surgery? And it's a kind of a heretic thought about brain tumors, because what we used to think about brain tumors, they can be operated, most of them. Not brain stem tumors like DIPG, but glioblastoma can be operated. 2 times. What does operation do also? It does not only remove the tumor, and very often, like in glioblastoma, it's the multiforme. It's a tumor that doesn't not have some very, very strict borders. So we cannot remove the whole tumor. There will also always be a population of cancer cells, of tumor cells in the brain tissue that will spread. And that's the problem. Not only those cells will be in the brain, but also they will create something called inflammatory chemotaxis. And inflammatory chemotaxis, there's a lot of research about that. It's the fact that the cancer cells, by pressure and by invading their own environment, you actually trigger their ability to spread, metastasis. And it's called an inflammation also. It's called inflammatory chemotaxis. So there are some researchers that actually say that surgery in many situations actually could be avoided if we had some other ways of working with cancer. So what I'm going to talk about is this transition, is paradigm shift from looking at cancer as the enemy to understanding cancer as the messenger. And not only scientists, it's also the patients and their families. They have to ask some questions. And those questions has to be very critical. And you know, it's hard to ask critical questions because you are acting as a heretic towards the establishment. Nobody wants to be a heretic in the establishment. For the establishment, scientists or patients or their families, it's a hard thing to do. So, and those questions has to be critical. And today I will tell you those critical questions that we have to ask. There's 5 of them. And those questions will be very likely to change our perceptions of cancer. And in many situations, they will be able to help us towards healing, also of brain tumors that are high-grade brain tumors. Very, well, glioblastoma is called Terminator. It talks for itself. So the first question is about survival rate. We have to ask, is survival rate an objective truth, or is it the limited perspective of a conventional approach? We have to understand that the survival rate is very closely related to what is measured by conventional medicine only using 3 main methods, all of which are highly invasive and kills both cancer cells and healthy cells. Does not really remove a problem because we are killing the symptom. We're not changing the environment, the triggers, but also influence what I call inflammatory chemotaxis, the spread. So these highly invasive methods are actually causing the spread. So is it an objective truth or is it a limited perspective? I'm not answering these questions, but you have to ask them. That was the question number 1. Question number 2 is is tumor incurable in all circumstances or in certain circumstances? This is also very, very crucial because we need to start thinking by ourselves. We need to use our critical thinking. And the problem is that our environment very often tend to stop us from thinking, to stop our thinking process because of fear, because of fear of not match to expectations or to the terms of what normality is in this in our modern environment. Again, the fear is not to be an heretic. So is disease incurable in all circumstances or only in certain circumstances? And we have to understand that the certain circumstances, that's exactly what conventional medicine always does. That's the surgery, the chemo, and the radiation. The third question is about fear of death. Very often when I'm working with people that have cancer, they are very much influenced by fear of death, and very often it's hard to break some taboos and to break some ways of thinking, ways of acting, and let them work. And that's what my function is. Let people work, let people take the responsibility. So the question number 3 is, should we stop talking? Should we stop learning when death enters the room? It's a very crucial question to ask, because that's what very, very often happens. Because people don't want to hear about the alternative. And when I'm using the word alternative now, it's not an alternative that has something to do with just taking supplementation or reading the aura or doing some kind of very alternative things. What I'm calling the alternative is the alternative to these invasive treatments. And my alternative is highly scientific, based on paradigm shift from targeted therapy that target some genetic mutations in the cancer. That's what all of those therapies are about, towards the metabolic theory of cancer, the theory that says that we are now trying to handle, trying to cure by killing the messenger, by targeting the symptoms, instead of understanding the triggers of the disease. That it's the environment that is wrong in our body, and especially in the brain, for the brain cells, that is triggering the cancer. So, should we stop talking and learning when death enters the room? So it's basically about breaking the taboo. We have to be aware. We have to understand what rules our perceptions. And very, very often what rules our perceptions of the situation is fear. Again, I'm not going to answer the question, but I want you to ask this question and think. Open up. The question number 4 is about an environment, your environment. Can we establish an environment where it will be possible to think, to talk, and to act upon the questions that are seeming most impossible. Is it possible to establish the environment like that? And this is a question about the conscious setup of your environment, the conscious setup of your framework where you act. And in this situation, you act to stop tumor from developing and to keep on acting so the tumor starts shrinking, and then keep on acting to let the tumor disappear and become scar tissue, because that's what happens when the tumor heals. So we have to be conscious again. We have to change our perception. What is right, what is wrong? What is symptoms? What are the triggers of the disease in the environment? We have to be very conscious about it. We have to be inquisitive. We have to ask questions. And those questions has to be critical. So you actually have to actually put yourself in a situation where you risk becoming a heretic for many people in your environment. But you have to remember, why do we do that? We do that to save life. And again, I'm not going to answer this question for you. And the question number 5, and that's about the taboo. What does it take to break the taboo? So basically, that's what the question number 5, it's the question that is the first question, basically. It was a very logical progress from 1 to 5, but actually the progression, but actually the question about the taboo is the most crucial question. Because if you're not breaking the taboo, you cannot start changing your reality, your perception of reality. You have to become better and better breaking the taboo and start thinking by yourself. Because your environment that promotes chemo, radiation, and surgery will never help you with that. That's how the system works. If you want to change, if you want to make the paradigm change, you cannot do it for the world. You have to do it for yourself first. And that's why we really need to understand and come back to this, what Albert Einstein said. We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. And that problem, again, it's that we are viewing cancer as an enemy that has to be killed. Exterminated. Cut out. Poisoned. Irradiated. And the new paradigm is that cancer is actually a messenger. Cancer is a messenger trying to say there's something wrong in your body. There's something wrong in the environment. Because normally the immunity can handle the cancer. All the people that are healthy, we bear many, many different strands or cancerous mutations. All of us bear cancer. That's just the immunity handles it. And when the immunity cannot handle it anymore because we have so many wrong behaviors, our lifestyle there's so many wrong aspects in our lifestyle that are promoting inflammation, that are promoting bad environment, that is that makes cancer, that makes our body good place to be for cancer. So what can we do? We can make our body uninhabitable for cancer cells. And that's what metabolic therapies are about. Not about killing the messenger, but actually changing the environment so the messenger says, okay, thank you, I understood. I remove myself, or I go back, or I disappear under the normal level where the immunity can again handle cancer cell populations. Okay? So the next step, we need to understand that what does it take to break the taboo? And to break the taboo, we need to actually establish the environment. And in this way, we started with the environment, remember? And then we had this progression until the taboo. But actually, it's a circular progression. We can start at every place on one of those 5 questions. So we actually have to establish the environment that is sound for us. The environment that helps us to create a framework where we can ask questions, where we are open to learning, where we are open to be critical, to ask critical questions. The environment that can tolerate us being heretics. And I kept on telling you that I don't have the answers to the questions. And that's right, because I want you to ask those questions and to ask with your family and to talk about them. But I can tell you that actually there is a concept that can help us to understand how this environment can be set up. And this concept is called MAPS environment, M-A-P-S, where M stands for mentorship, A stands for accountability, P stands for peer support, and S stands for systems. Let me explain. Mentorship means that you have to learn in order to reverse a very complex disease as cancer. It's not a disease of a single gene. It's not a disease that can be cured with targeted approaches to these single genes. Because when we're talking all cancers basically, but especially multiforme cancers like glioblastoma and DIPG, the cancer cell populations are highly heterogeneous. Means there are many different strands of different mutations, 50, 60, 100 mutations in one tumor. So you cannot target all the 100 without killing a person, basically. That's why you cannot survive what the doctors basically says to you if you ask. It says, you're gonna die from glioblastoma, you're gonna die from DIPG. Because they don't know better, because they use invasive methods that work with symptoms, okay? So, you learning about the disease doesn't change the situation in this setup. That's why this framework is wrong. You have to be inquisitive, you have to learn, and the mentorship is exactly what it is about. It's about learning. It's about both learning human physiology and the ways you can retrain normal physiology. And that's mentorship. The next thing, we're calling that systems. The system It has to be a plan that is not just a specialist plan. We're working with breathing, or we're working with only nutrition. Nutrition will help everything. Or we're working with movement. Movement, the only thing we need is movement. It's natural for a person. Or we are working with mental training. Everything comes from your head. When we change our perception, everything will be all right. Or we work with immunity, special approaches that are targeted to immunity. Okay? No, it's not a specialist disease. It's a syndrome of many different factors. That's what is called metabolic syndrome. All cancers are metabolic syndrome. They are not diseases. They are multifactorial syndromes. So the healing protocol has to be multifactorial. And that's what system is about. When we create the system where we are connecting the dots of all the areas of human physiology in order to reverse cancer, we can make the real change. And that's where the paradigm shift is towards. Okay? And that's optimization of energy acquisition, which is breathing, at this oxygenation of the brain cells. And that's how we kill cancer. And then we have the optimization of nutrition. That's exactly how we kill cancer, also by diminishing inflammation. And then we have something that's called resilience. We have to have 3 kinds of resilience that have to be stronger. That's the mental resilience. That is a steering power. And then we have physical resilience, our ability to move, our ability to go from fight and flight response, from chronic stress to normal acute stress, and that is sympathetic, rest and digest. That's where immunity works. So this system have to include a plan to work with all of those things. And not only with the physiology, but also with the training regimens. Okay? So it's very, very crucial. Then we have to have something that is called accountability. And accountability is very crucial here, because without accountability, we will have, we will actually fall off the wagon. Because accountability, it's where we have to measure something or tell the mentor about how we are proceeding with the system, with training, with understanding, okay, with our measurements to see the progress of healing. And that's what's called accountability. Without accountability, we cannot reverse a complex disease. It's very crucial. And then we have the last thing that is called peer support. Peer support means that we have to work in a community, and the community will help us, because we will create what we call sharing of knowledge, knowledge sharing. We will learn from each other, because all of us, we have a different perception of the same thing. If we are talking about physiology, different people will ask different questions. And if we are in a milieu, in an environment, in a framework where we are able to listen to each other and learn from each other every single day, because we cannot just meet once a week. We have to meet, we have to reverse cancer by metabolic therapies. We have to work every single day. We have to learn every single day. We have to ask questions and receive answers from a mentor and from the peers. Experience every single day. And now to the good news. Because I can tell you that the environment like that is already created for cancer. I created it together with my team. And I just came back from a conference about childhood cancers here, September in London. It's called Childhood Cancers UK 2018. And I made a presentation about my latest research paper that I wrote about the synergetic effect of simultaneous optimization of breathing patterns and of nutritional patterns, and how it can affect metabolic syndrome, which means a complex disease. So it was a very inspiring conference, and I met my guru, Professor Thomas Seyfried from Boston University. That is a kind of he's a guru, he's a father of this concept, in a way, modern concept of metabolic therapies for cancer. He wrote a book that is a kind of a Bible for all of us that are inspired by him. And it's called Cancer is a Metabolic Disease. And he's promoting the ideas of Otto Warburg that received a Nobel Prize for 80 years ago, basically. And still, the researchers all around the world, they are working with the same theory of Otto Warburg. They are just trying to kill cancer by targeting the symptoms with invasive therapies, instead of understanding the profoundness of work of Otto Warburg and other scientists that basically told us that the cancer is a disease of environment. So Thomas Seyfried is taking the learnings from the theory of Otto Warburg, 80 years old theory, more than 80 years old, and making a conclusions that actually treating cancer as a symptom is a very bad idea and will never, never bring us closer to curing cancer. And there will never be any kind of magic pill that the scientists keep on announcing year after year. Still, the rates of cancer are growing. The survival rates of glioblastoma multiforme and DIPG is not changed at all. So, this is a disaster, and we have to act upon it. Okay? So what I'm telling you is basically that, you see, that's about glioblastoma. And glioblastoma multiforme, we have to act before we cross the point of no return. Because we have some prerequisites for stopping and reversing the tumor progression, but what we call non-pharmacological metabolic approaches. And then the view, that's the new paradigm I'm talking about. Non-pharmacological, which means without the medicine, but metabolic approach. We see cancer triggers, we see the environment, the metabolism of the cells. We normalize the metabolism, we ask cancer to leave, because we're looking at cancer not as enemy, but as messenger. It gives us a message. And what I'm talking about is actually that the glioblastoma had the window of opportunity where the reversal is possible via active and structured effort with non-pharmacological metabolic approach. And we have only two windows that are very short. The first window is between the diagnosis and the first surgery or chemo and radiation. That's the first possibility for an active reversal effort. And this window is about 1 month wide. So this window of opportunity is not really big, and we have to act upon this. The second window of opportunity is in the post-treatment, after surgery, chemo and also radiation. They can overlap a little bit or a lot, but this window is wider, and we have this second window of opportunity for an active reversal effort is about 3 months or sometimes a little bit longer. But what I want to say here is that after this window of opportunity, we have something called point of no return. And I'm really telling you, please ask those 5 questions that I just told you about. Because the point of no return, as it is now with conventional therapies, will always come. Because those cancers are terminators. We have to break the taboo and talk about this. Because then, after the point of no return, we have no opportunity anymore. Because we can not really work actively. Because you see, all these non-pharmacological metabolic approaches, they require hard work every single day. And when people cross the point of no return, they have no basically energy left to do that. They have no resources anymore. So we have no physiological prerequisites. So the biochemical change is irreversible after the point of no return. We have no psychological prerequisites for healing because our readiness to change is not intact anymore. And the third one, we don't have consciousness prerequisites for stopping and reversing brain tumor progression because the attention and awareness needed for active daily effort are gone. So what we have now, the only possibilities in the window of no return will be the second surgery, the chemo or radiation again and again, and then decline, and then hospice, and then death. The situation is more dire yet with DIPG. Simply because with DIPG we have no possibility for chemotherapy, it doesn't work, proton therapy doesn't work, and we cannot operate on DIPG normally. It does not extend the survival rate, simply because of that. And the survival rate for DIPG are smaller yet than glioblastoma, 3 to 5 months shorter. But still, it's the, as you can see here, the only difference is whether or not we have surgery and chemo. And post-radiation in DIPG is still the same thing. We have the second possibility for an active reversal effort, and it's still about 3 months window. Okay? Sometimes it can be a little bit longer, but when the point of no return sets in, we have the only possibility, and that's unavoidable decline, where the active effort is impossible. That's what we call terminal stage. So now I'm telling you about the environment where we basically can work with non-pharmacological metabolic approaches. And this environment is called BEAT DIPG or BEAT GBM, and that's the intensive boot camp. This intensive boot camp starts actually right now, and when you work with this boot camp, you will be able to have support every single day. You will have mentorship and systemic approach of learning every single day from Monday to Sunday in 26 weeks. And then you will have a direct line with me online every single day from Monday to Friday, 5 days a week, for 1 or a little bit longer time, 1.5 hours. And we will be in the supported by the peers, because all the peers will be there, and you will have also a closed forum where you can exchange information every single day. And what you will do, you will actually make an active effort to make, it's actually a paradigm shift for looking cancer as the enemy to understanding cancer as the messenger. And you will be able to regain the responsibility for your health, or for the health of your relative or your child, in your own hands. Now, what to do after you heard all of this? What are the actionable points? And the actionable point is that I'm inviting you to the webinar. You have a date right there. Please attend the webinar where you will be able to ask me direct questions. This webinar will not be an automated webinar, because in the automated webinar you then have a direct cooperation, direct question and answer, live effect. I'm not doing automated webinars. I'm only doing live webinars because I believe in that we people, we need to establish living relationships, also online. So please remember my webinar. Please subscribe here to this webinar, and I will look forward to meet you online and to answer all your questions related to this paradigm shift of looking at cancer as enemy and seeing the cancer as a messenger, learning from it and applying this knowledge to a non-pharmacological metabolic approach that will give us an opportunity to reverse the most aggressive high-grade brain tumors.